UPSC aspirants out there today, we're diving straight into some daily current affairs stuff. France's defense strategy. This isn't just like another random headline, though. This could be a huge shift in global geopolitics, and that's UPSC exam gold right there.
Oh, absolutely.
We're pulling from the Asian Times on this one, so if you want to read the whole thing yourself, go check them out.
Yeah, great source.
But the big thing for you is this deep dive isn't just about France. It's about understanding power dynamics and strategic autonomy.
Yeah.
Those are core themes in international relations.
Exactly. And what's so interesting to me is how France, even though they're a core NATO member,
Right.
they keep talking about this European autonomy idea more and more. But it makes you wonder, is this like cracks in the alliance or just a smart move in this world where lots of different countries have power?
That's the question, and the timing, too.
Yeah.
With the Ukraine war going on, it makes you think, is this a reaction to doubts about the U.S. really sticking with Europe for security in the long run?
Oh, for sure, because the U.S. has been the foundation of European defense for decades.
Through NATO. Yeah.
Exactly, through NATO. And that's what makes Macron's recent statement about France extending its nuclear deterrent to other European allies.
Oh, yeah.
So provocative, imagine the ripple effects. Could this change who's really guaranteeing security in Europe?
Okay, hold on. Let's break down this nuclear offer, because saying it is one thing.
Right.
But how realistic is it really? France would be putting themselves on the line for other countries.
Yeah.
What kind of assurances would they need back? Would this even be legal without a whole new treaty? And maybe most importantly, how would Russia react to this?
Oh, yeah. They're already on edge about NATO expansion.
Exactly. This could make things way worse. It's a gamble, isn't it?
Absolutely. But the fact that Macron even brought this up says a lot about how France's strategic thinking is changing.
Yeah.
And this isn't just out of the blue. It comes from their long-standing emphasis on strategic autonomy.
Yes. Strategic autonomy. The buzzword that seems to define French defense policy. It's about keeping control, making your own choices, not relying too much on others, even allies.
Yep.
And you see that most clearly in their choice to develop the Rafale fighter jet instead of joining the U.S.-led F-35 program.
The Rafale, that's a perfect example for you UPSC folks studying out there. It's become a symbol of French independence.
Oh, yeah.
They designed and built it practically from scratch, engines, weapon systems, all domestic.
Totally different from the F-35, which is a huge multinational program with all the sharing of technology, joint development, the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like a classic UPSC mains question waiting to happen.
I can see it.
Compare and contrast the Rafale and F-35 programs, highlighting their strategic implications. What do you think?
Spot on, because it's not just about comparing like the technical specs.
Right.
It's about understanding the ideas behind these choices. The Rafale shows France wanting control over its defense, while the F-35 brings up these questions of depending on the U.S., even for allies.
And then it gets even more interesting when you consider that France is still part of the Future Combat Air System program.
The FCAS.
Right. The FCAS, a big European project, so they're not totally isolating themselves.
Exactly. They're choosing, carefully collaborating where it makes sense, but keeping their autonomy when it comes to the really important stuff.
So this isn't about going it alone. It's about partnerships that make sense and being able to rely on yourself.
That's it.
So let's zoom out for a second.
Yeah.
How does all this play out in the global defense market?
Yeah.
You've got these two powerhouses, the Rafale and the F-35, both trying to get those sales.
Right.
Where does France's strategic autonomy fit into that?
Well, it's definitely shaking things up. The Rafale has gotten some big deals lately, and not just because it's a good aircraft.
I bet.
The fact that it's not tied to the U.S. defense system is a big selling point.
Makes sense.
For countries that want to keep their independence in defense policy.
And that brings us to something especially relevant for India, especially since we've gotten Rafale jets ourselves.
Oh, exactly.
How do you see France's moves impacting India in this changing world?
That's a great question. On one hand, this could really strengthen India's position. France wants to partner with countries that share their vision of a world with many centers of power. India fits that perfectly. A major power, shared interests in things like maritime security, and definitely not looking to be anyone's follower. It's amazing to see these global shifts happening. The old ways of thinking from after the Cold War are fading, and countries like France are rethinking their place in this new world where power is spread out.
Yeah. And they're not afraid to make big moves like that nuclear umbrella offer we talked about. But let's be honest, is that something other European nations would even want?
That's the thing. It's a tricky situation. Some might see it as extra security, but others might see it as weakness, like admitting they can't defend themselves. It could really divide Europe.
And don't forget about Russia. How would they see this? Would they think it's a threat?
Yeah.
We know they're sensitive about NATO expanding, so this could make things even worse. It's a risky move, right?
Totally. But it shows how seriously France is taking this new era of strategic competition.
Yeah.
They're willing to make bold moves, even if it upsets some people along the way. And this push for European autonomy isn't just about military power, is it?
No, you're right. It's about a bigger vision.
Yeah.
Right? One that goes beyond defense to things like economic independence,
Yeah.
technological leadership, and the ability to project power globally.
Exactly. It's about being a major player on the world stage, not just reacting to what others do. And remember, their commitment to strategic autonomy isn't just talk. We see it in how they're pushing the Rafale.
Speaking of the Rafale, it's not just for them, they're really marketing it internationally. It's like they're saying, hey, if you value independence and don't want to be tied to the U.S. defense system, we have something for you.
Right.
Pretty smart, considering some countries are hesitant to rely only on one superpower.
It's a good strategy, positioning themselves as supporters of national sovereignty, and they have a real solution to back it up. And this brings us back to India. Remember, we not only bought Rafales, but we're also pushing our own Make in India initiative for making our own defense stuff.
Right.
Seems like France and India have some common goals here.
There's definitely potential for a stronger partnership, not just buying and selling weapons.
Yep.
But we have shared concerns in maritime security, counterterrorism, the Indo-Pacific.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, both India and France see value in a world with more balanced power, not just concentrated in a few countries.
Yeah.
This shared vision could be the foundation for a really strong partnership.
This is all important stuff for any UPSC aspirant. Wouldn't you say we're talking about the core ideas of international power dynamics, strategic autonomy, alliances, competition, all happening right now?
I couldn't agree more. It's a fascinating case study in how a country like France is navigating this quickly changing world.
But let's not forget, while France is pushing for a more independent Europe, they're still in NATO. So how does this push for autonomy work with being in the alliance?
Right.
Could this be a sign of problems within NATO?
That's the big question, isn't it? On one hand, their actions might seem like they're weakening NATO unity.
Yeah.
They're basically saying they don't fully trust the U.S. to have their back and encouraging other European nations to think the same way.
But on the other hand, they haven't left NATO entirely, and they haven't ruled out working with the U.S. on certain things.
Right.
It seems more complicated than a complete break.
You're right. It's about finding a new balance within NATO, one that recognizes the realities of the 21st century. They want the security of being in NATO, but also the freedom to act on their own when they need to. It's a tough balance.
And let's not forget, France isn't the only one wanting a more autonomous Europe. Other countries like Germany are also pushing for a stronger and more independent role for Europe in the world.
That's important. France might be the loudest voice, but this isn't some fringe idea.
Right.
There's a growing feeling across Europe that they need to take more responsibility for their own security and their own future.
So it's not just about France. It's a bigger European trend that could have huge implications for relations with the U.S. and the global balance of power.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how all this plays out in the next few years.
This has been a really insightful discussion. Don't you think we've gone deep into the complexities of France's strategy and its potential consequences? Our UPSC aspirants out there should have lots to add to their notes by now.
I agree. It's a great example of how a country with some power but not a superpower can navigate this new world order. And it offers important lessons for other countries too, including India.
But we've only just scratched the surface. Remember those tech ambitions we mentioned?
Yeah.
They're not just like side projects. They're a big part of France's push for autonomy.
Oh, absolutely. France has a long history of innovation, and they're really focused on using that to become a major player in the tech world, especially in areas that are tied to their strategic autonomy.
So let's break it down. What are the key tech areas on France's radar?
Well, first off, artificial intelligence. They've put a lot of resources into AI research and development, and it's showing results.
Yeah.
You've got some world-class companies working on really advanced stuff, from machine learning algorithms to autonomous systems.
Now, I know AI is a big deal everywhere, but why is it so important for strategic autonomy?
Think about it this way. AI could completely change warfare. Imagine drones that can operate on their own process battlefield data instantly and even make decisions without human input.
Wow, that sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It might, but it's becoming real fast. And France wants to be a leader in this revolution, making sure they don't have to rely on others for these crucial technologies.
So AI is one piece of the puzzle. What else is on their tech agenda?
Cybersecurity is another huge priority. As we use digital tech more and more, the risk of cyber attacks goes up.
Right.
And these attacks can cripple important infrastructure, mess up communications, even influence elections.
So cybersecurity is about way more than just protecting your computer from a virus. It's national security.
Exactly. And France understands that they've set up a whole cybersecurity agency. They're investing a lot in advanced security tech, and they're working with European partners to build a joint defense.
So they're not going it alone in the cyber world.
Nope. They know that in cyberspace, threats are global, so you need a coordinated response, especially with your neighbors.
Makes sense. So we've got AI, cybersecurity. Anything else on France's tech hit list?
Space technology is another big one. Access to space is becoming super important, not just for communication and navigation, but for intelligence gathering and even military stuff.
So it's not just about launching a few satellites anymore.
It's about developing a whole range of space capabilities. France is putting a lot of money into this, building their own space agency, launching satellites, and even working on their own space launch vehicles.
The goal being to control their own access to space instead of relying on other countries, which, as we talked about, fits perfectly with their strategic autonomy goals.
Precisely. It's all about having the tech to act independently in every area, including space.
And I imagine all this high-tech development isn't cheap.
Definitely not. But France sees it as a long-term investment in their security and their success, a price they're willing to pay to chart their own course.
All right, let's bring it all together for our UPSC folks out there. We talked about their defense strategy, nuclear ambitions, focus on independent technology. What's the big takeaway here?
I think it shows that France is determined to be a major player in the 21st century. They're not content to be in the U.S.'s shadow, and they're not afraid to shake things up a bit.
Basically carving their own path,
Yeah.
one based on their own values and interests.
Exactly. And like any ambitious path, there will be good things and challenges along the way.
So what should a UPSC aspirant take away from all this?
We'll first realize that the world is changing, the old rules are disappearing, and we're moving towards a world with multiple centers of power. Countries like France see this and are positioning themselves accordingly.
And in this new world, technology is key. Mastering the tech of the future will give countries a big advantage.
Absolutely. It's a wake-up call for India to prioritize investing in its own technological capabilities if we want to be a leader.
Great point. Another takeaway is to pay attention to the new alliances and partnerships that are forming. The old Cold War groups are gone, and new ones are appearing based on shared interests and values.
Exactly. France, while still in NATO, is building closer ties with countries like India that share their vision of a multipolar world. This shows how much the global landscape is shifting.
So this whole situation with France is a goldmine for anyone preparing for UPSC exams. It's not just about remembering facts, but understanding the trends that are shaping the world.
It's a textbook example of how international relations play out in the real world.
And one final thought I'd like to leave you with: France's push for strategic autonomy highlights that even in our globalized world, national sovereignty still matters. Countries are looking for ways to protect their own interests and decide their own futures.
It's a powerful message that resonates not just in Europe, but in nations like India as well.
Well, on that note, it's time to wrap up our deep dive into France's grand strategy. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking. And remember, this was based on an article in the Our Nation Times, so go check it out if you want more details.
And if you have any questions or want to explore a specific aspect further, leave a comment below.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with our deep dives into important global issues, all tailored for you, the UPSC aspirant. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.